All right, what's good, everybody? This is Boxingwave. Please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification button as well, so you'll be alerted whenever I drop new content. Okay. Now, there's a couple of videos I want to do moving forward from Usyk and Dubois and what is the future of the heavyweight division. But I want to stay on these two before we move on. Usyk, what does he do next? All right, he's already beaten Danny Dubois for the second time. He stopped him in the fifth round. I was able to rewatch the fight with my father the other day, and I was able to watch a bunch of interviews, do a ton of research, and look at the rankings of the heavyweight division, and try to sort out like where do we move on from here. Now, originally, I said I think Usyk should retire from the sport. Okay, I still believe that. I think he's done everything he needed to do. I said this after beating Tyson Fury in the rematch. I know the rematch. I don't even think the rematch was definitely necessary. I think he did enough to win the first fight, but beating him even more clear in the rematch to me, I said he should walk away from the sport. But he decided to take on Daniel Dubois, who was the IBF champ at this time, and do that rematch because it made sense, because of all the controversy in the first fight with the low blow and everything like that. So now that he's beaten Dubois even easier, much easier, where should Usyk go? Again, I think he should retire, but I didn't know that he was getting over $100 million in each and every one of the fights. I'm not the channel that talks about purses and all of that stuff more. I talk more about the fights, the breakdowns. I talk about those kind of things. But I don't follow the purses as much as some of the other channels out there. But I did find out that he accumulated over $100 million for this fight here. I know he did for the Fury fight, but now this is the second fight where he's made over $100 million for one fight, for 5 rounds of beating up Daniel Dubois to make $100 million behind that is crazy. So when I say he should retire, and he clearly continued, he still wants to fight. His post-fight interview, he's like, yeah, I'm going to see my family. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. You had Joseph Parker in the ring, calling him out respectfully, not in the way that Dubois did after Usyk beat Fury for the second time, but in a respectable way, like asking for his chance and opportunity. So when you're making $100 million and being from the Ukraine and what his country and the people from his country has gone through, with the attack from Russia and everything, I'm not going to get overly political, but we know all about that. You know how many lives that man can change every single time he fights? Like, let's forget about the wealth that he's created for himself and his family. Just look at what he can do as a whole for his country, fighting one night, $100 million. I understand why he's going to continue fighting, and not only that, but as a competitor, as a guy that doesn't seem to be afraid to lose that O. And as a guy that, yes, I don't think he's in his prime, but he still looks so good. You know what I mean? Even at the age of 38, as he's aging, he's still looking so good. There's no signs of dramatic slippage in his performances. So when you look at that, you look at the amount of money he's making, and just looking at him as a person, as personality, as a competitor overall, he really thinks he's the best, but he's very humble about it. I can understand why he's going to continue fighting, because none of us are going to understand him. Even if you're a pro boxer, even if you're at the level that he's at, his mindset is totally different from the rest of us, because he truly believes he's not like a lot of these other fighters that's trying to protect his O. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what makes him one of the greatest of this generation and already one of the greatest of all time. All right, so where do we go? We got 3 people specifically. There's a few others, but we're going to talk about it. Now, when it comes to the WBO, there is one mandatory for now. The WBO, Joseph Parker is the mandatory right now, okay? Usyk has dropped the belt before to have that rematch with Fury. That's how Daniel Dubois was able to pick up the IBF strap. So it's not like if he doesn't want Parker, it's not like he doesn't. I'm sure he doesn't have that. He doesn't have a problem with dropping the title if he doesn't want Parker. Parker is a good fight. All right, I already said this. Parker's a good fight. I love Joseph Parker. I think he is in his prime right now. I think he has improved. I think his ability has improved, but I think the mindset and the experience has made him a better fighter recently. Coming off some of the wins he has as well. I look at Parker like he's the Sean Porter of the heavyweight division. What I mean by that is, everybody talks about Spence and Thurman and some of these other guys that was from that time. But when you look at Porter, he literally fought all of these guys, and most of them in their primes. We're talking about Errol. We're talking about your Dennis Ugas, Terrence Crawford, okay, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Kell Brook. He's the only one from that whole class, the post Pacquiao, Mayweather, Marquez, Bradley class, that fought all of the best fighters. He fought all of them. So even though he has losses, they were always good performances. The only fight where he got stopped was against Terrence Buck Crawford at the very last fight on his way out. Everybody else, Keith Thurman, Kell Brook, Errol Spence, all super razor close fights, right? So when I look at Parker, he's that guy in the heavyweight division. He's been in there with Wilder. He's been in there with Dillian White. He's been in there with Anthony Joshua. He's been in there with just about everybody except Usyk and Tyson Fury, and he wouldn't fight Tyson Fury. I don't believe he would. Been in there with Chisora. He's been in there with so many good fighters, top talent, and I think he's deserving. I think he's the most deserving out of everyone that's left, okay, that Usyk has not faced. I think he's the most deserving, and he is currently the mandatory for the WBO strap, okay? But right underneath him, we have Moses Itama, who just a minute ago, a couple of days ago, I was saying, I'm not mad at that fight, but of course Moses doesn't have the experience yet. Yes, he has a fight coming up with Dillian White, but he hasn't had the experience as some of the other top guys that's up there, like Joseph Parker or even Ajit Caballo, who I'll speak on in a minute. But Moses, I wasn't aware that he's already number 2 in the WBO ranking. Excuse me, the WBO rankings, and he's number 2 with I believe the WBA as well. So I can sit here and say he doesn't have his experience. He's too young, whatever. At the end of the day, he is actually officially ranked. He's only a fight away from getting a title shot, potentially. He's that close. So he's there. He's no longer a prospect. We have to get out of our minds that he's a prospect. No, he's a contender at this point. I was saying this about Abdullah Mason. Abdullah Mason, same thing. He's young. He hasn't fought a top tier fighter yet at 135, but he's already ranked there. Same thing with Xander Zayas. He's already ranked there. It doesn't matter how I feel. He's ranked there. We just haven't seen him with a top tier fighter yet. So he's right there. And then you got Ajit Caballo, who's not a mandatory, but he's like the number 2. Let me just double check. No, not with the WBA. Ajit Caballo is right behind Derek Chisora in the IBF over there. Okay? And he's number 2 as well on the WBC. Okay, so he's right there. So these guys are ranked right there. What does Usyk do? I don't know. I don't know what to do. He could do whatever he wants. You know what I'm saying? So there's possibilities that he could fight a Tyson Fury again for a 3rd time. Do I want to see that? No, not really. Definitely after the rematch. I think the rematch was justifiable, but he clearly won in a rematch. And Fury's not fighting anybody in between. Fury has announced his retirement. I don't even know why he's still ranked right now. So do I want to see a 3rd Fury fight? No, but I know money talks. I know Turkey loves Tyson Fury. Don't really want to see that. Derek Chisora's name is there. You know, Derek Chisora's rank. Do I really want to see that fight? No. But Derek Chisora has picked up a few good wins against guys that are older. You know, I think it's a lot of it has to do with the timing of these wins. I don't think Derek Chisora would beat the younger, fresher, or the guys that are still roughly around their prime type of guys. But I think that Derek is a guy that's been around and he's still doing his thing because of his style, but because of the timing of the opponents that he's facing. You know, beating Kublat Pulev, beating Joe Joyce at the timing that he fought them, it was very beneficial for him because even though he's older, they've been through a lot. At the end of the day, Derek Chisora at an older age did enough to beat those guys. You know what I mean? So with Usyk, it could be one of these three. I hope it's one of these three, and I'll explain. I'm talking about Moses Caballel, who is ranked in two different divisions. He's coming off some really, really good wins. You know, Caballel beat Arslanbek. Okay, he beat Gilles Jean. He beat Frank Sanchez. He stopped all three. Okay, I think stylistically, it's a very good fight. I think it could be a difficult fight simply because Caballel has a great engine. Okay, he never in the past I didn't see him fighting so aggressively, but now he's doing it, and I think he looks good doing it. Um, so I think stylistically, it would be interesting to see Usyk fight against a pressure fighter like a Caballel because Caballel hits hard, he's durable, and he has good cardio. So that would make that fight interesting because Usyk is usually beating guys because he just outworks them, you know. But he outboxes him, but he outworks him at the same time. Caballel would be an interesting fight. Joseph Parker, experience, hand speed, counter punching. He has a little slickness to him. He has some pop in him. Again, and right now he's doing his best work being with Andy Lee. And this is a guy that I just want to see him get the opportunity. Like I want to see him fight Usyk more so than Caballel, only because I like Joe, and I like what he's been through. I think a guy that fought, even with the losses he had, I think a guy that fights like that and goes straight right in there with the top guys consistently should earns a heavyweight shot. You know, so I like Joseph the most out of it. I think when it comes to Moses, Turkey tweeted that he's interested in making that fight. Turkey has been very, very active on Twitter, on X, and a lot of times, most of the time, he's getting the boxing fan base very upset. But with that, I'm not gonna lie. I've said this about Moses, and I am very excited for him. I think he looks the most promising out of everyone on that's on the come up in the heavyweight division. And I also said this too, because I was here for it and I watched these guys. I think Moses, as a prospect and as an up and coming contender, looks better to me than what I saw at AJ at this time in his career, what I saw from White at this time, Parker at this time. I think Moses looks better than those three at that time. You know, I know he hasn't fought the guys to really prove that. There's a lot of things I want to learn. Like, can he take a good shot? You know, what happens when he's, you know, fighting someone that he can't just quickly knock out when he goes the rounds. You know, I used to say this about Edgar Berlanga when he was doing his first round knockout streak. Can he actually box? Moses has shown me that he can box. Okay. Even though the knockouts were quick, I think that Moses is definitely a very good boxer. He's freakishly quick and powerful, but the reflexes are there. The IQ is there. Fundamentals are there to me. He's just not a guy that's just forcing knockouts. I think this guy can really, really box. And when I listened to uh, Talk Sports channel, and they did some interviews with Joseph. Shout out to Talk Sport. They did an interview with Joseph Parker and Lawrence Coley, and I watched the interview this morning. And there was a bunch of interviews there with Derek Chisora, Tony Bellew, just talking about this fight, Don Charles, which I'll talk more in a separate video. When Joseph Parker and Lawrence Coley both say, like, we sparred this kid. It's not a fluke. It's not a joke. It's a real thing. This kid is really good. And these are guys that are looking for their own title shots. Lawrence Coley is not too far from one. Joseph Parker is right there. For those two to say, like, no, this is real. I've sparred with him. We sparred with him. He's really good. That's only further confirming what I see from him. He's ranked there now. All we got to do is wait to see what happens. He fights Dillian White soon. I think he's going to actually stop Dillian White within a couple rounds. Dillian White is far past it, but he is a former top contender in the division. Never won a title, but he is a former top contender in the division. And he's been in there with a lot of good people. So I am curious to see how Moses would do against Usyk, simply because I see the hand speed, I see the power. He's fresh, he's young, he's not all worn out. He doesn't have the experience like the other guys do, but his youth might be the advantage going against a guy like Usyk right now. So it will be a great fight. So I'm not mad at any of those three fights. I think the most realistic fight is probably between Moses or Parker. Moses simply because of what Turkey had said. But if Moses were to get a shot at Usyk first, then most likely the WBO strap will be dropped, because Parker is the mandatory. Okay. So I would be curious to see how Moses do against Usyk. It's fun sometimes to see what a young, fresh fighter can do when we think he's not ready for the opportunity, but maybe he is. All of those fights are good, and at this point, like I was stating earlier in the video, when you're making over 100 million, I mean, he's already wealthy, super wealthy. I mean, we're talking about generations, of wealth here at the highest level. But if you're going to continue getting that kind of money or anything close to it, why stop when you're still looking so good and you're still healthy and you're still boxing at a high level like the way he is, So anyway, that's my thoughts on all of this. I really don't want to see a Fury trilogy. I really don't want to see a Chisora rematch. I would like to add, though, Chisora did actually do better against Usyk compared to some of the other guys that Usyk has fought at heavyweight. I've said this in other videos. I think Chisora was a very, very, very difficult fight for Usyk. Even if you think Usyk won, I think that was one of his toughest fights, because Chisora fought the fight where a heavyweight is supposed to. That's how you welcome a cruiserweight, a smaller guy, up to the division. And I don't think anyone has fought nearly that aggressive and been that effective as Chisora. So I don't want to see that fight, but if it happens, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You know what I mean? Usyk has had a crazy schedule anyway. Not saying that would be an easy fight, but that's not one that I would expect in any way to be difficult for Usyk, as far as like the chances of him losing a fight. Absolutely not. All right. So anyway, that's my thoughts for now. Let me know in the comments, who do you want to see him face? I would say Parker #1, and I would say Moses #2. I'm going to just throw this out there. I have said this before. If Parker doesn't get the Usyk fight, I'm cool and I'm great with him fighting Moses, if that is available. But I'm also always wanted to see the rematch between Parker and AJ. I didn't like the first fight. I thought both fighters kind of played it too safe. And I also thought the referee was too involved in that fight. I would love to see how that match would go right now. I just want to see it. You know, I mean, Joshua won, but that was a fight that I didn't like the performance from neither one. It just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't mesh well. Right. So I'm just throwing that. That's totally random, but let me know in the comments, who do you want to see Usyk face? Do you want him just to retire? We all do. Okay, we all do. But if he doesn't retire, who do you want to see him fight next? All right. I will see you guys on the next one. Be safe. Peace.